Hey everyone, it is Thomas Aquinas again, or Leah Mara in the Discord, coming at you again with another PvP summary. I want to give an overview of what's popular right now, kind of a meta snapshot. I have quite a few bits of statistics collected about what's popular right now. And I'll also talk a little bit about defensive positioning and how to protect yourself against the most common meta strategies right now. So as always, I don't really care about this video and this channel, but if you give me a like in game, I'd very much appreciate it. I want to hit 10, but again, I cannot send likes to myself. So here's some stats I've collected about the prevalence of different characters in attack and defense teams. I have them for different ranks, and the first one's for Masters 3 and higher. These ranks are based off of not the rank when that person attacked or was attacked by me, but their final rank at the end of the season. And so you'll find there are a lot of people here, Masters 3 and higher. I have similar for Grandmasters, and for Challenger, again, I didn't interact with the people who ended Challenger that much, so the numbers are much smaller. But yeah, you can get an idea of the prevalence of units. So obviously with the advent of Eclipse has absolutely taken over the meta. She is incredibly popular on both attack and defense, and Scheherazade has continues to remain incredibly strong on both attack and defense. Leclis and Glacian continue to be the strongest tanks. The main takeaway I think from this is that Justia and Lathel are much less popular than before. They used to be something like 70-80%. Justia and Lathel are now more like less than 40%. I still think Justia and Lathel is the strongest opener in the game, but the one possible reason for why Justia Lathel is not as popular now is because Justia never had a banner for her kit, whereas a lot of people were able to +5 Eclipse, and now with Helena being back, her banner returning, newer players can have Helena +5 as well, so it's much easier for a newer player to put together a very strong PvP team. Yeah, and as you can see, as always, Rue, Sylvia, Angelica continue to be the strongest follow-up costumes. Gray is probably the strongest, but less popular because you'd have to wail really hard to get his costume high enough. For some reason, Dalby's here. I still think Dalby's very strong, and then you can see a lot of other units are used very, very rarely. Grandmaster, it's again mostly the same picture, but you'll see Leclis and Glacia being used even more, and Eclipse being used even more, relatively speaking. And since you are starting to get back a little bit into whale territory, you see Gray showing up a lot more as well. And then for Challenger 3 and higher, this is just 7 people that attacked me and that I was attacked by, or that I attacked for people that ended up in Challenger. Seji's here. Seji, I know you ran a Ventana. It was kind of goofy with that Ventana. I'm not sure why she's there. But main takeaway is Eclipse, Glacia, 100% required on high elo defense teams. Alec is also very prevalent. You have to have a well-built Alec, but Alec has a really nice diagonal attack that can catch a lot of offenses off guard. If he can survive turn 1, he can oftentimes kill 2 or even 3 units without even needing any buffers. And also you'll see on defense the complete absence of Lathel. Justia is still used pretty often, but you just don't see Lathel anymore because he's just not that strong. And people are running more mixed compositions with running both Leclis and Justia that want physical damage, and also the high prevalence of Eclipse has completely eclipsed Lathel's usefulness out of the meta. Yeah, so hopefully that's useful. Let's talk about the main carries right now on turn 1 on offense. It's either Eclipse or Justia, or in some cases you run both. And then for supports or secondary carries, so there's still H. Lathel, there's still B. Helena. If you're a newer player, there's still Aranus and Samia that you can use to buff your carries. But for the secondary carries, if you're a newer player, right, there's the Emma, there's the Crybat, right? And if you're your higher elo, you're probably going to be running either Angelica's base costume, which I think is very strong. There's Sylvia's sword costume, and then Rue Kick. Right, these are kind of your best options, and if you're Uber Whale and you have a really high manager Gray, really well built, he's probably the best alternative, but you have to whale pretty hard to get him +3 or higher. So Diana, Sylvia, and Rue, I'm going to consider the most commonly seen secondary carries, and so for positioning, I'm going to mostly consider these main threats. You have obviously Justia and Eclipse, and then you have Rue, you have Angelica, and you have Sylvia. And I'm going to talk briefly about the strategies against them. Obviously with Justia, you want to make sure her stab doesn't hit more than 1 unit, and you want to make sure, or if you want, you can try instead to have Leclis fully tank the Justia stab. This does not work in super high elo, but if you're just trying to get Masters 1, you'll find a lot of Justia stabs may not do more than 20k HP, so if you can build a 24, 25k HP Leclis, it requires some investment, but she'll be able to tank that stab, and you probably win the fight off of that. If you're playing for Eclipse, which is what you should be because Eclipse is by far the most popular unit in the game, aside from Shahara, who doesn't use our costumes on turn 1, you should be expecting to look, Eclipse instead. You want to make sure Eclipse doesn't hit more than one unit, even though she has that huge skip plus line. And if you can, you want that one unit to be a Glacia or at least an MDef Bruiser so that they can tank it, right? With Root Kick, we know we want to protect against Root Kick, you either have one unit in a column, or you don't build the front lines with too much HP, and or the backline unit behind them has to have high defense and ideally some HP. To counter Angelica, you need high MDef and avoid that diagonal pattern. I run this offense, and I can tell you lots of times people get caught off because they don't realize that in trying to protect against Eclipse, they have put their units in an X pattern, which is great for Angelica. She eats that for breakfast. And then Sylvia. Sylvia is probably the most common unit used with that bonus SP, but I think it's one of the weaker ones. It's a pretty strong physical attack. It makes her turn 3 really strong at the cost of having a slightly weaker turn 1, right? Because she buffs herself, so her future turns are stronger. So power budget wise, her turn 1 is not as strong. And this one's probably the easiest to counter. Just make sure you can't hit 2 units or build them with high defense, right? So with that, let's go into game. So now let's talk about some positioning ideas that you should think about when forming your defense. I'm not going to tell you how to put your units exactly because that depends on what costumes are available, what kind of gear you have, etc. But here's some general ideas. So the main thing is, because Eclipse is so popular, you want to make sure that she only hits a maximum of 1 unit in 2 columns. And the third column, you just understand 1 out of 3 times she's going to hit 2, hit the jackpot, easy win. But for example here, if Eclipse goes down the left column, she only hits my Eclipse and probably doesn't kill her. If she goes down the right column, she only hits my Helena. She probably kills Helena, but I could replace that with a Glacia or something that could probably tank it. And then in 2 out of 3 columns, I can win against the Eclipse comp. Yeah, and there's different permutations of this kind of defense. For example, you can do something like this, right? This also hits only 2 units. You can mirror it, right? There's all kinds of different ideas that you can see. You can figure out all the different permutations of it and which one works for you. And these work out nicely as well because they work well against Justia, since Justia, you don't want to put 2 units together. If you put 2 units together, especially in the left column, Justia can get an easy double stab. Now, Justia is not as popular anymore, so you might want to consider trying something like a 401. For example, if you did this and you put a well-built Glacia in the corner, you might be able to win purely off of Glacia just being able to tank the heck out of everything, right? Because if Eclipse goes down the middle or the right, she can't kill this Glacia, she can't kill this Eclipse, and then you probably just win the fight off with that altogether. But again, this is really weak to an Eclipse going down the left column, which is not popular right now. I think it's pretty commonly Eclipse attacks each different column at a pretty even rate, as opposed to Justia, who always stabs down the left. So if you want a chance at winning against Justia, you shouldn't do this. Yeah, and then against Diana, it's very tempting, or not Diana, against Angelica, it's very tempting against a unit like Eclipse to do something like this, where you position to make sure she only hits a maximum of 2 units in 1 column, but this does open yourself up to a unit like Angelica's, whose base costume will hit all 3 of these units, so just be aware of that. Angelica's not too popular, but enough so that I would mention it. Again, with Sylvia is very similar to Justia. You just don't want to stack 2 units up together such that they both get hit, and Justia can hit both of them. And those are kind of the main costumes to worry about on offense. Again, there's no perfect defense that can counter everything, so you just kind of need to know what's popular. That's why I would reference those graphs I put at the beginning of the video. And so with that, I hope this has given you some ideas of what is popular right now. Obviously, we see Eclipse and Helena and Eclipse plus Flex as really popular turn 1 openers. And as always, have fun in PvP, and I will see you in the arena, and I will catch you later.